You're not a lawyer, girl. You're just another criminal in a cheap suit. The words slammed into the silence like a gavel strike. A few people in the courtroom laughed the cruel, sharp laughter of those who believed they already knew the ending. Judge Harold Morrison leaned back in his chair, lips twisted into something between amusement and contempt. The overhead lights reflected off his glasses, hiding his eyes. Beneath him, at the defense table, stood Maya Johnson, 18 years old, 5'5", wearing a borrowed blazer 2 sizes too big and shoes that pinched her toes. Her wrists still bore the faint red marks of handcuffs. Her voice, when it came, was soft but steady. "Your Honor, I'll be representing myself." Gasps rippled through the room. Her public defender, Mr. Carter, blinked in disbelief. "Maya, don't," he hissed. "Take the plea. 18 months is a blessing." But Maya didn't turn to him. She kept her eyes on the judge. The prosecutor, Thomas Richardson, smirked like a man watching a child pretend to drive. "Fine," Morrison said, the laughter still lingering in his voice. "Play lawyer. But when you fail, don't say this court didn't warn you." He tapped his gavel once, the sound echoing through the stale air. The crowd murmured. Someone coughed. A reporter scribbled in the back row, pen scratching paper like a whisper of judgment. Maya's heart beat so loudly she could feel it in her fingertips. She swallowed hard, refusing to blink. "They've already decided," she thought. "Before I even opened my mouth." They didn't see the library shifts, the scholarship letters. Her mother's double shifts at Mercy General. They saw only a black girl in a cheap suit. Richardson rose to speak, papers rustling. "The state is ready, Your Honor." Morrison nodded. "Then let's begin. Miss Johnson, since you've chosen to perform, I suggest you keep up." Maya nodded once, gathered her papers, and approached the podium. For a second, her hand trembled. She tightened her grip, feeling the small silver cross at her neck press against her skin, her mother's gift, her reminder to stand tall. She breathed in. The smell of coffee and dust filled her lungs. The jury looked at her with a mixture of pity and curiosity. She spoke quietly. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, "you'll hear 2 stories today. One is about a robbery. The other is about a pattern. Only one of them is true." Before anyone could react, Morrison cut her off. "Save your theatrics for closing, Miss Johnson. Proceed with questioning when the state finishes." Maya nodded and sat down. The courtroom noise swelled again, small talk and whispers like static in her ears. Her mother, Patricia Johnson, sat in the second row, hands clasped tight in her lap, rosary beads hidden between her fingers. The woman's face was calm but pale. She mouthed one word. "Breathe." Maya exhaled slowly, pretending to take notes while the prosecutor presented evidence, the same grainy footage of a convenience store, a tall figure in a red cap, the timestamp matching the night Maya had been walking home from work. "You'll see," Richardson told the jury, "that the defendant had motive and opportunity. She needed money for tuition, and she targeted a small business to get it." Morrison glanced at Maya. "Your turn will come. Don't waste it." Maya's pen scratched across the paper, though she wasn't writing anything. Motive. Opportunity. Lies. The footage didn't show her face, but it didn't matter. The store owner, Howard Davis, had pointed at her that night without hesitation. "That's her," he'd said. "That black girl." It was enough. The system didn't need proof when it had assumption. When the recess bell rang, Morrison announced, "Court will resume in 15 minutes. The gavel struck again, and people began to stir. Maya stood frozen. The wooden floor creaked beneath her shoes. She felt eyes on her, some pitying, others hateful. Richardson passed by her table, leaned close enough for her to smell the cologne and arrogance. "You're smart," he murmured. "But not smart enough. Take the deal before it's too late." She looked up at him, calm. "See you after lunch, counselor." He laughed and walked away. Patricia hurried forward, her nurse's shoes squeaking. "Baby, are you sure about this?" Maya nodded, though her throat was tight. "I have to be, Mama. Nobody else will fight for me." Patricia cupped her daughter's face. "You've been fighting since the day you were born. Just remember who you are." Maya managed a faint smile. "A Johnson. And Johnsons don't kid." The bailiff cleared his throat, reminding everyone that recess was over. As Maya sat again, she caught sight of her reflection in the polished table. For a heartbeat, she didn't recognize herself, the girl who had once dreamed of Harvard, standing now accused of robbery. But behind the fear was something else. Resolve. She could feel it settle into her bones. When the judge returned, she rose before he could speak. "Your Honor," she said, "before we continue, I'd like to submit a motion to present new evidence." Morrison frowned. "What evidence?" "A recording," she said simply. "It's the voice of the man who told me I'd never see sunlight again." The courtroom went still. Richardson froze mid-step, papers in hand. The judge's eyebrows lifted. "You're saying you have a recording, Miss Johnson?" Maya met his gaze. "Yes, Your Honor. And it proves this case isn't about robbery. It's about corruption." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Morrison leaned forward, his tone suddenly cautious. "We'll hear it tomorrow. Court adjourned for today." He struck the gavel, but his eyes no longer held laughter. As the crowd filed out, Maya sat back, gripping the silver cross around her neck. The city outside the courthouse was bright and loud: horns, buses, voices. But inside her, there was silence. "Tomorrow," she thought, "they'll hear me. Not because I shout, but because truth doesn't need to scream to be heard." Her mother touched her shoulder gently. "Let's go home, baby." Maya nodded. She glanced once more at the seal of justice carved above the judge's bench, the scales uneven, tilted slightly to one side. It reminded her of what her mother used to say when bills piled up and hope ran low. "Justice isn't always fair, Maya. But it's still worth fighting for." As they stepped into the Baltimore sun, Maya's steps were slow but sure. Tomorrow, she would walk back into that courtroom not as a defendant, but as a girl daring the world to listen. 4 months earlier, the summer heat in East Baltimore shimmered on the cracked sidewalks like waves on asphalt. The air smelled of fried food from the corner diner and the faint tang of bleach from the laundromat where Patricia Johnson worked extra hours after her hospital shifts. Their row house stood between two boarded-up buildings, paint peeling, porch creaking, but to Maya, it was the safest place on earth. That evening, a cardboard box sat on the kitchen table. Patricia wiped her hands on her scrubs, smiling through exhaustion. "Go on, open it," she said. Inside lay an envelope with the crimson seal of Harvard University. Maya tore it open carefully, her fingers trembling. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. "We are pleased to offer you admission with full scholarship to Harvard College, pre-law program." For a moment, both women stood in silence, staring at the letter like it might vanish. Then Patricia laughed deep, unrestrained, a sound that filled the whole house. "You did it, baby," she cried, pulling her daughter into her arms. They celebrated the only way they knew how: fried chicken from Mrs. Lee's diner, a store-bought peach pie, and a shared bottle of root beer. Patricia raised her glass. "To the first Johnson to make it out and never look back." Maya smiled, eyes shining. "To the woman who taught me how to fight." That night, long after her mother had gone to bed, Maya stayed up reading about constitutional law. The old fan hummed beside her, blowing the scent of ink and heat. She whispered to herself, "One day, I'll stand in a courtroom and make them listen." At the time, she didn't know how soon that day would come. Weeks passed quickly. She spent her mornings at the library, afternoons volunteering at a youth center, evenings helping her mother manage bills. The neighborhood knew her name. She was the Harvard girl, the pride of the block. Even Officer Michael Williams, who patrolled the area, sometimes waved from his cruiser. "Stay out of trouble, Miss Johnson," he'd say. She always waved back, polite, believing him a good man. On a humid Friday in July, she left her shift at the library late. The street was quiet except for the hum of neon from Davis convenience store across the road. She stopped at the crosswalk, fishing for her bus pass, when sirens cut through the night. A police car screeched to a halt beside her, lights flashing red and blue. "Hands where I can see them," Williams' voice barked through the loudspeaker. Maya froze, stunned. "Officer." "It's me, Maya." Two officers jumped out, guns drawn. The store owner, Howard Davis, emerged from the doorway, pointing at her. "That's her. That black girl. She took the money and ran." Maya's heart raced. What? No, I've been at work all night. There's a clock-in log, security cameras. But the words vanished under the click of handcuffs. Williams shoved her into the back seat. You can explain downtown. The ride to the station was a blur of flashing lights and disbelief. At the precinct, they fingerprinted her, photographed her, asked questions she'd already answered. When she tried to call her mother, they told her to wait. By the time Patricia arrived, eyes red, voice trembling, Maya was already charged with armed robbery. She's just a kid, Patricia pleaded. Check the footage. But Officer Williams merely shrugged. Camera was down. Bad luck. The next morning, they appeared before a magistrate. A public defender named Carter introduced himself between phone calls. You're looking at 3 to 5 years, he said briskly. But the DA might offer a plea. 18 months. Good behavior. You're out in 12. Maya stared at him. I didn't do anything. I believe you, Carter said, though his tone said otherwise. But trials are risky. Especially with Judge Morrison. So you're saying plead guilty to something I didn't do? Carter sighed. I'm saying be practical. The system doesn't care about your GPA. When Maya returned home that afternoon, the Harvard letter was still on the fridge. By evening, an email arrived. Due to pending felony charges, your admission is rescinded. Patricia read it aloud, then sank into a chair, her hands shaking. They can't do this, she whispered. Maya stood motionless, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. One accusation, she thought, and everything disappears. Over the next few days, she called every lawyer she could find. The cheapest quoted $5,000 just for a consultation. Her mother started selling old jewelry. We'll find a way, Patricia said, but her voice had cracks like thin ice. Then one night, while pacing the living room, Maya spotted an old law textbook on the coffee table, a donation from the library's clearance bin. She flipped through it aimlessly until one phrase caught her eye. Ferretta v. California, 1975. The right of a defendant to represent themselves in court. She read the case twice, then 3 more times. If the only person who believes I'm innocent is me, she whispered, then I'll be my own lawyer. From that day, her room became a war room. Law books stacked like walls, sticky notes covering every inch of the wallpaper. She wrote timelines, cross-referenced police reports, and requested the 911 call transcript. It took 2 weeks to arrive. When it did, she sat at her desk, listening to the crackly audio. The caller Howard Davis told the operator. Tall man, maybe 6 feet, wearing a red cap and beard. Maya froze. The official report listed. Suspect. 5'5", female, no hat, no beard. Someone had changed the description. She cross-checked older cases involving Officer Williams and Davis. One after another, she found the same pattern: young black students with scholarships, charged with nearly identical crimes, all pleading guilty. Every report used the same phrases, almost word for word. Late one night, her mother entered quietly, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. You're still at it? She asked. Mom? Maya said, not looking up. What if this isn't a mistake? What if they're working together? Patricia frowned. Baby? That's dangerous talk. So is the truth, Maya said softly. A few days later, she received a call from prosecutor Thomas Richardson. He offered to meet, off the record. In a dim conference room at the courthouse, Richardson leaned back in his chair. Plead guilty to a lesser charge, he said. We'll drop the felony. You'll walk out with probation. No prison. Maya shook her head. I'm innocent. His smile vanished. He leaned forward. Listen carefully. I've buried defendants older and smarter than you. Don't be the next one. He stood to leave. And she quietly slipped her phone into her pocket, recording. When he was gone, she stared at the blinking red dot on the screen. Maybe this time, she thought, they picked the wrong girl. That night, as rain beat against the window, she sat by her desk, headphones on, replaying his threat. Her silver cross gleamed under the lamplight. She thought of her mother's words. Justice isn't always fair. But it's still worth fighting for. Outside, thunder rolled through the city. But inside, Maya Johnson made a silent promise. They wanted her to take a plea. She would take them to court instead. Maya's bedroom no longer looked like a teenager's room, it looked like a legal command center. Law textbooks were stacked on the floor beside her bed, color-coded sticky notes covered the walls, and a dozen folders sat open on her desk. Each one held copies of police reports, transcripts, and receipts. At night, she fell asleep to the hum of the desk lamp and the scratch of her pen. The calendar on the wall counted down to the court date: 30 days, then 20, then 10. Every morning, she woke with a mix of dread and purpose. Patricia tried to keep the house quiet before her shifts, but sometimes she'd stop in the doorway and watch her daughter, hunched over paperwork, lips moving as she whispered phrases from legal precedents. "Baby, you need rest," she'd say. Maya would glance up, dark circles under her eyes. "I can't rest until they know the truth." The neighborhood, once full of people congratulating the Harvard girl, had grown wary. Some neighbors looked away when she passed. Others whispered, "Maybe she did it." Maya overheard one evening while walking home from the grocery store. "You never really know people." She tightened her grip on the paper bag and kept walking, forcing herself to breathe. She had no room for anger, only focus. One Saturday afternoon, she visited the public library, now both her refuge and battleground. The librarian, Mrs. Reynolds, greeted her with a sympathetic smile. "Still researching, honey?" "Trying to learn the rules of evidence," Maya replied. She found a seat in the corner and opened an old volume titled The Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. The pages smelled of dust and ink, but every paragraph felt like a weapon waiting to be sharpened. She highlighted phrases, wrote questions in the margins, and copied citations into her notebook. Around her, the world seemed to fade. The next week, she returned to the courthouse to file her motion for self-representation. The clerk, a gray-haired woman with kind eyes, looked at the papers and frowned slightly. "You sure about this, sweetheart? It's not an easy road." "Neither is prison," Maya said. The woman nodded slowly, stamping the document. "Well, you've got courage. That counts for something." On the way home, Maya stopped at the diner near their block. The smell of bacon and coffee wrapped around her like comfort. A couple of old men at the counter discussed baseball. The jukebox played soft Motown tunes. She ordered pancakes and scribbled notes on a napkin. Cross, examination strategy. Catch contradictions. Start with Davis. Then Williams. Patricia slid into the booth beside her, still in her scrubs. "You look like a lawyer already," she said softly. "A tired one," Maya replied with a weak smile. "I found something strange in the records. Every report Williams filed about those other kids used the same sentence. Suspect apprehended near the scene after quick pursuit. Word for word." Patricia frowned. "Maybe he just copied to save time. Or maybe he copied to hide a lie," Maya murmured. The waitress, an older woman with red lipstick and kind wrinkles, refilled their coffee. "Y'all take care now," she said. "World's not always fair, but sometimes it surprises you." That night, Maya pulled up an online database of public records. She traced Davis's insurance claims. 6 payouts in 3 years, each after alleged robberies. Every time, Officer Williams was the responding officer. The pattern was too neat to be coincidence. "They're working together," Maya whispered. She could almost hear Richardson's voice in her head. "Don't make me bury you." She hit record on her phone again, practicing her opening statement aloud. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case isn't about guilt, it's about patterns. Patterns that reveal corruption hiding in plain sight." Her voice wavered, then steadied. She looked at her reflection in the window. Not the scared girl from before, but someone learning to stand her ground. 2 nights before the trial, a knock came at the door. Patricia answered to find Officer Williams on the porch, his uniform pressed, his smile polite but thin. "Evening, ma'am. Just checking in on the case." "You shouldn't be here," Patricia said. "We're fine." He tilted his head, eyes sliding past her to where Maya stood behind. "Miss Johnson," he said smoothly. "I'd hate for things to get messy. The DA offered you a good deal. You should take it." "I already said no," Maya replied. "I'm innocent." His smile faltered. Sometimes innocent people get hurt trying to prove that. Patricia stepped forward. Get off my porch. Williams raised his hands, backing away. Just giving advice. As he left, Maya felt the chill in the humid air. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat at her desk, typing notes for the cross-examination. Ask about 911 call time. Ask why description changed. Ask about insurance payout. Her mother came in quietly, setting down a mug of chamomile tea. He's trying to scare you, Patricia said. Don't let him. Maya looked up. I'm not scared anymore. Patricia's eyes softened. You remind me of your father when you say that. Stubborn and brave. Maybe too brave. He would have fought too, Maya whispered. Patricia nodded. He would have told you that courage doesn't mean you don't feel fear. It means you keep walking anyway. The night stretched long and heavy, filled with the sounds of distant sirens and the scratching of Maya's pen. By dawn, she had built her argument line by line, a wall of logic no intimidation could shake. When morning light crept across the room, she leaned back, eyes burning but heart steady. She thought about the jurors she'd face, the judge who'd mocked her, the men who'd lied. They think they've written my story, she thought. Tomorrow, I start writing it myself. The day before trial, she walked through the courthouse lobby to deliver one last motion, her request to submit new evidence. People stared as she passed. Some curious, some doubtful, some quietly rooting for her. She could feel it, the weight of expectation, of history, of all the ones who'd been silenced before. The clerk who had stamped her first motion smiled when she saw her. You again, she said softly. I was hoping you'd come back. Maya returned the smile. I'm not done yet. She filed the paperwork, thanked the woman, and walked outside. The city smelled of rain and exhaust. Cars honked. A man sold newspapers on the corner shouting headlines. Maya bought one, flipping through absent-mindedly until a headline caught her eye. Another youth sentenced in robbery case, Officer Williams commended. She folded it neatly, slipped it into her folder. Proof of a pattern, even if no one saw it yet. That night, she laid out her outfit: a pressed white blouse, the borrowed blazer, and the same shoes that had pinched her toes weeks ago. Her mother helped iron the cuffs, her movements slow but steady. You ready? Patricia asked. Maya nodded. Ready as I'll ever be. Patricia kissed her forehead. Remember, you don't have to shout to be heard. Just speak the truth. Maya smiled faintly. That's the plan. When she finally went to bed, the rain had stopped, leaving the city washed clean. Tomorrow would be her first day in court. Tomorrow, the laughter, the doubt, the years of silence would meet one small voice willing to fight back. She whispered into the dark, as though to herself, as though to everyone who had ever been dismissed. They wanted me to plead guilty. But I'm going to make them listen. The courtroom smelled faintly of coffee and paper, old justice and new fear. Maya stood at the defense table, her palms pressed flat against the wood. The cold grain steadying her heartbeat. The crowd whispered in low tones, curious, doubtful. Cameras flashed near the back, local reporters covering the teen who fired her lawyer. The judge's gavel struck once, slicing through the hum. Court is now in session. Judge Morrison adjusted his glasses, peering down with that same mocking calm. Miss Johnson, the floor is yours. Let's see what Harvard in waiting has prepared. Maya ignored the snickers that followed. She took a slow breath, the silver cross at her neck warm against her skin. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, she began, her voice clear though her hands trembled slightly. You'll hear two stories today. One is about a robbery. The other is about a pattern. Only one of them is true. Richardson rolled his eyes. Objection, opening argument masquerading as testimony. Morrison waved a lazy hand. Let her talk. The show's about to start. Maya met the judge's gaze, unflinching. The state claims I robbed Mr. Howard Davis's store on July 18 at 9:42 p.m. They say I was desperate for money for college. But desperation doesn't change height, weight, or gender. Evidence does. She turned toward the projection screen. Play Exhibit A. The 911 call filled the room with static, then a man's panicked voice. Tall man, maybe 6 feet, wearing a red cap and beard. Maya paused it halfway. Does that sound like me? she asked softly. A murmur swept through the gallery. The jurors shifted in their seats. Davis, seated at the witness table, avoided her eyes. Mr. Davis, she said, walking toward him. You filed that call, correct? Yes, he said, voice tight. And yet, your official police report described a 5'5" female suspect with no hat or beard. How do you explain that? Davis stammered. Must have been confusion. Adrenaline. Or maybe, Maya said, her tone calm but sharp. Someone wanted to make sure the suspect looked a lot more like me, and a lot less like the real thief. Richardson jumped to his feet. Objection, speculation. Morrison hesitated, then sighed. Sustained but barely. Stick to questions, Miss Johnson. Of course, Your Honor, Maya said, almost smiling. She turned back to Davis. You've had 6 insurance claims in 3 years, all for robberies at your store, haven't you? That's private business, he said quickly. I'm just trying to stay afloat. Maya lifted a paper from her folder. Each one signed by the same officer, Michael Williams. Each paid within 5 days. Quite the partnership, wouldn't you say? The courtroom buzzed. Davis's face flushed crimson. You're twisting this. Am I? Maya held up another document. This is your bank statement showing recurring transfers to a security consultant. Officer Williams' account number matches. The sound of chairs shifting filled the air. Morrison tapped his pen, face unreadable now. Richardson called out. Irrelevant. She's smearing a witness. Your Honor, Maya said firmly. The defense is establishing motive and collusion, both directly relevant to the credibility of testimony. Morrison leaned back. Overruled. Proceed. For the first time, the laughter in the courtroom died completely. Maya continued, her confidence growing with every word. Officer Williams, please take the stand. Williams rose slowly, expression tight, jaw locked. He sat, his badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Maya approached with quiet steps. Officer Williams, you were first on the scene that night? Yes. At what time? Around 9:50. The call came in at 9:42. You live across town. How did you arrive in 8 minutes during rush hour? Williams blinked. I heard it on the radio early. Responded fast. And yet the dispatch log says you clocked in at 10:28. Maya held up a printout. That's 46 minutes later. A ripple ran through the jury. Williams' shoulders stiffened. Maybe a system error, he muttered. Maybe, Maya said. Or maybe you were busy editing a report. She lifted another page. Did you write this? He nodded. Then explain why 4 other reports you filed this year have identical sentences, word for word, describing completely different suspects. Williams didn't answer. Sweat rolled down his temple. I don't recall, he finally said. I do, Maya replied. Because I read every one. Richardson slammed his folder shut. Objection, irrelevant. Overruled, Morrison said again, voice quieter now. Let her finish. Maya took a step closer to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, if every crime looks the same, if every suspect matches the same false description, maybe the real crime is the pattern itself. Silence followed. Even the air felt heavy. Richardson rose, straightening his tie. Your Honor, this circus has gone far enough. Miss Johnson's theatrics don't change the facts. The store was robbed, and she was found nearby. Nearby, Maya repeated. Coming home from work. In a library uniform. With a time card proving my shift ended at 9:45. The real thief was already gone. She turned to the jury again. They saw my skin, not my evidence. Patricia sat in the second row, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. The room seemed to tilt, as if the walls themselves leaned closer to hear her. Maya held up her final exhibit, a photo of the evidence bag containing a red cap found behind the store. DNA tests show it belongs to a male suspect still unidentified. The police never pursued it. They stopped once they had me. Morrison's pen stopped tapping. He leaned forward. You're saying the investigation was falsified? Maya met his gaze. I'm saying the investigation was convenient. Richardson jumped up again, voice shaking. She's out of line. but even he could feel the ground shifting beneath him. One juror scribbled notes furiously, another crossed her arms, frowning. Morrison rubbed his temple, muttering, "Continue." "No further questions," Maya said. She returned to her seat, legs trembling but steady. The courtroom buzzed louder now, half disbelief, half awe. Richardson rose, tried to regain control. "Ladies and gentlemen, don't be fooled. She's just a scared girl, throwing mud to see what sticks." But his words landed hollow. Everyone had seen Williams sweat, heard Davis stammer. When court recessed for lunch, people didn't rush for the doors. They lingered, whispering. Maya sat down, her hands clasped. Patricia hurried to her side. "You did it, baby. You made them listen." Maya shook her head. "Not yet. But they're starting to hear." Morrison's gavel called the room back to order after recess. Richardson looked pale. He called no more witnesses. "The state rests," he said. The judge turned to Maya. "Your final chance, Miss Johnson. Any closing statement?" Maya rose. "Just one." She faced the jury, her voice soft but cutting through the stillness. "The truth doesn't need to shout. It only needs room to breathe. Look at the evidence, not the color of the hands that present it." For a long moment, no one moved. Morrison's gaze lingered on her. Something in his expression had changed, less condescension, more unease. "We'll reconvene tomorrow for verdict." The gavel fell. As the room emptied, Maya sank into her chair, exhaustion washing over her. She had survived the storm of their disbelief, but the fight wasn't over. Outside, the sky had turned gray. Rain began to fall against the courthouse windows, each drop sharp as memory. Tomorrow would bring judgment one way or another. Patricia reached over, taking her hand. "You did everything right," she whispered. Maya looked at her mother's worn fingers, the lines carved from years of labor, and nodded. "I just told the truth," she said quietly. "Now it's their turn to decide if that still matters." The next morning, the courthouse buzzed like a hive. Reporters clustered on the front steps, microphones flashing, cameras aimed at the entrance where Maya and her mother approached. Patricia held her daughter's arm, whispering, "Keep your head high, baby." Inside, the marble hallways echoed with the click of Maya's borrowed heels. The courtroom was fuller than ever. Activists, students, even a few church elders from their neighborhood had come to watch. Judge Morrison entered, the gavel slamming down. "Court is in session. Miss Johnson, the floor is yours for rebuttal." Maya rose, the sound of her chair scraping on the floor cutting through the murmurs. She glanced at the jury, faces serious now, no longer dismissive. Her voice trembled only slightly as she began. "Yesterday, we heard from the people who claimed to serve justice. Today, I'll show you what they served instead. Fear, greed, and silence." Richardson rolled his eyes. "Here we go again with the speeches." Maya ignored him. She turned to the screen, pressing play on a small recorder she held in her hand. The voice that filled the courtroom was unmistakable. "I will bury you so deep you'll never see sunlight again if you don't take the deal." The room went dead quiet. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Richardson's face drained of color. "Your Honor, that recording is authentic," Maya interrupted. "It was taken during our private meeting in the courthouse 2 weeks ago." She held up a printed transcript, stamped by the clerk who had time. Stamped her file submission. "It's his voice threatening me for refusing to plead guilty." The jurors stared, stunned. One woman covered her mouth. A man in the back row muttered, "Lord have mercy." Morrison's expression hardened. "Mr. Richardson, is this your voice?" Richardson's jaw worked. "It's taken out of context. She's manipulating." "Answer the question," Morrison snapped. "Is that your voice?" Silence stretched until even the bailiff looked uneasy. Finally, Richardson exhaled sharply. "Yes, but..." "No further explanation," Morrison said, his tone cold. "This court will review the recording fully." He turned to Maya. "Continue." Maya took a slow breath. "Steady now." "Your Honor, this recording proves that the prosecution didn't just mishandle my case, they abused their power to bury the truth. And that truth is this. Officer Williams and Mr. Davis created false reports to profit off insurance money, and the prosecution chose convenience over justice. She walked toward the evidence table, her footsteps deliberate. This case isn't just about me. It's about every student. Every kid from my neighborhood who was told to plead guilty because no one would believe them. Her mother's quiet sob broke the silence behind her. Richardson slumped into his chair, face buried in his hands. The once smug prosecutor looked suddenly small, cornered by the very system he'd twisted. Maya handed the recording device to the bailiff. "Please submit that into evidence." Then she turned to Officer Williams, who sat pale and stiff at the side table. "Officer, do you still maintain your report was accurate?" He didn't answer. "Do you still claim the suspect was female?" His lips parted, but no sound came out. "Because the real suspect," she said, lifting a folder, "was caught 3 nights ago by an independent investigator I contacted. His fingerprints matched the ones on the cash register. His name is Robert Hill. He's 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, and—" She paused, her gaze hardening. "He has a beard." The gallery erupted in gasps. William's face turned red. Davis's hands began to shake. Maya continued, her tone calm but cutting. "Mr. Hill confessed to 3 robberies, all tied to the same insurance claims filed by Mr. Davis. The report from the private investigator is in your packet. Exhibit 12. Judge Morrison read the first page, his expression darkening with every line. "Officer Williams," he said slowly, "you may want to consult counsel." The officer's voice cracked. "I was told to follow orders." "Whose orders?" Morrison barked. Williams looked down. "The DA's office wanted quick convictions. Davis paid off the claims, and I got bonuses for clearing the cases fast. It wasn't supposed to go this far." The courtroom broke into chaos, shouting, gasps, cameras flashing. The judge slammed his gavel again and again. "Order, order." Maya stood still amid the noise, her mother watching her with trembling pride. When the noise died, Morrison turned to Maya. "Miss Johnson, this court owes you an apology." His voice softened. "The charges against you are dismissed, effective immediately. Furthermore, I'm ordering an investigation into the misconduct of all parties involved." He nodded toward the bailiff. "Take Mr. Richardson and Officer Williams into custody pending formal inquiry." The bailiff moved swiftly. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed a haunting mirror of the sound that had once bound Maya's own wrists. Richardson tried to protest, but his voice broke into incoherent anger. "She's lying. This is a setup." But the judge ignored him. Court adjourned. The gavel came down one final time. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions. Patricia pushed through the crowd to wrap her arms around her daughter. "It's over, baby," she whispered, voice shaking. "It's really over." Maya leaned into her mother's embrace, the tears she'd held back for weeks finally spilling over. "We did it, Mama. We made them listen." Around them, flashbulbs popped, but the noise faded to nothing compared to the steady rhythm of her mother's heartbeat. Outside, the afternoon sun glared off the courthouse steps, blinding and brilliant. As they exited, people applauded quietly. Neighbors, strangers, even a few jurors who had tears in their eyes. An old woman from their church pressed a hand to Maya's arm. "You reminded us what courage looks like," she said softly. Maya smiled through her tears. "I just wanted the truth." Patricia squeezed her hand. "And you got it." That night, back home, the house felt different. The same cracked walls, the same humming fridge, but the air was lighter. On the kitchen table sat the old Harvard letter, edges curled, and next to it, the court's dismissal order. Patricia brewed coffee, the smell rich and warm. "So what now?" she asked. Maya smiled, weary but content. "Now? I rest. Then I study harder than ever. Because I want to make sure no one else has to go through what we did." Her mother nodded, pride shining in her eyes. "Justice doesn't come easy. But it came home tonight." Maya held the cup between her hands, watching steam curl upward like a prayer. The city outside was quiet, but she could still hear echoes of the gavel, the click of cuffs, reminders of both pain and victory. She knew the road ahead would be long, that the scars left by this fight wouldn't fade quickly. But for the first time in months, she believed in tomorrow. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "They tried to silence me. Instead, I made them silent. Patricia looked up from her coffee, smiling. What did you say? Maya met her eyes and smiled back. Nothing, Mama. Just thinking how good justice sounds. 1 year later, autumn leaves drifted across the courtyard of Harvard Yard, painting the brick walkways gold and red. The air smelled of rain and old books. Students hurried between classes, laughing, carrying coffee cups and laptops, their chatter blending with the distant chime of church bells. In the middle of it all, Maya Johnson walked slowly, balancing a stack of casebooks against her hip. She still wore the silver cross her mother had given her. It glinted against the crisp air like a quiet promise. A year ago, she had walked out of a courthouse with her freedom. Now, she was walking toward her first seminar at Harvard Law School. People recognized her sometimes. They whispered her name, or pretended not to. But she could feel their curiosity. Her story had been in the news for months, the girl who defended herself and exposed corruption. Some called her a hero, others called her lucky, but Maya never liked either word. Heroes were flawless. And luck was blind. What she'd done had been neither. It had been survival. After class, she met with Professor Daniels, a silver-haired man with kind eyes and a voice like gravel. Miss Johnson, he said, offering her a seat. Your analysis on due process was sharp. You write like someone who's lived inside a courtroom. Maya smiled faintly. I guess I have. He studied her for a moment, then leaned forward. You ever think about working in public defense? We need voices like yours. Someday, she said. Right now I'm still learning how to be heard without shouting. He nodded knowingly. That's the hardest kind of learning. When she left the office, the sky was pale and low. She called her mother, as she did every evening. Patricia answered on the first ring, the sound of clinking dishes in the background. Hey baby, she said. You sound tired. Just class, Maya said, smiling. Professor Daniels thinks I should go into public defense. Sounds about right. You were defending people before you even got your degree. Patricia laughed softly. I'm proud of you, Maya. I know, Mama. I just don't ever want to forget why I'm here. Then don't, Patricia said simply. Just remember the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs someone to say it out loud. Maya looked across the campus where students were setting up for a justice reform rally. A banner flapped in the wind, fair trials for all. She felt a tug inside her chest, a familiar ache, the same feeling she'd had when she'd stood in that courtroom, trembling but defiant. Hey Mama, she said. I gotta go. There's something I need to check on. You okay? Yeah, Maya said. Better than okay. She hung up and walked toward the rally. A young man stood at the microphone, speaking about racial bias in sentencing. His voice was passionate, but nervous. When he stumbled over a phrase, Maya stepped forward and offered him a steadying smile. Afterward, he thanked her. You're Maya Johnson, right? The girl from Baltimore? She nodded, used to the recognition. Yeah. But I'm just another student now. Maybe, he said. But you made me believe we can actually change something. His words lingered with her long after the crowd dispersed. That night, back in her dorm, Maya opened a letter from the Innocence Initiative of Baltimore. It was an invitation. We have a case that may interest you. It read. A high school student accused of theft. Circumstances sound familiar. She stared at it for a long time, the ink blurring slightly as her eyes watered. The next morning, she called the number listed. The director, an older attorney named Carl Hayes, picked up. Maya Johnson, he said warmly. We've been waiting for your call. Tell me about the case, she said. He explained. A boy named Jamal, 17, honor student, accused of robbing a corner store. The same officer's precinct. The same language in the report. You think it's still happening? Maya asked quietly. We do, Hayes replied. We could use someone who's seen the system from both sides. Maya agreed without hesitation. Send me the files. That evening, she sat at her desk, reading through Jamal's case. The words felt eerily familiar. Suspect apprehended near scene after quick pursuit. She could almost hear the echo of her own story in those pages. Her hands trembled, but not with fear, with purpose. She stayed up late, taking notes, marking inconsistencies, preparing questions. The next day, she took the train to Baltimore. The city looked both the same and different, the same cracked sidewalks, the same sirens in the distance, but the air no longer felt heavy. She visited the youth detention center where Jamal was being held. The boy looked up as she entered, eyes wary. "You're the lawyer?" he asked. Maya smiled gently. "Not yet. But I'm working on it." He hesitated. "They said I should just take the deal." "That's what they told me too," she said softly. "But sometimes the truth deserves a chance." He watched her for a moment. Something flickering in his expression, hope. Fragile but alive. When she left, Patricia was waiting outside in her old blue sedan. She'd taken the afternoon off just to be there. "You still chasing justice?" she asked as Maya climbed in. "Guess I don't know how to stop." Patricia smiled, eyes proud but sad. "Your daddy would have been proud too. You know that, right?" Maya nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I hope so." They drove in silence for a while, the city fading behind them, the sun dipping low. Finally, Patricia said, "You think justice ever really balances out?" Maya thought for a moment, watching the horizon. "Maybe not perfectly. But every time someone stands up instead of staying silent, it tips a little closer." Patricia nodded slowly. "That's good enough for me." When Maya returned to Cambridge that night, the campus was quiet, windows glowing like lanterns in the dark. She walked past the library, past the statue of John Harvard, until she reached the steps of Langdale Hall. She stood there for a while, breathing in the cold night air. She thought about the girl she'd been, a scared 18-year-old in handcuffs, and the woman she was becoming. She whispered into the empty courtyard, "Justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers through the ones who refuse to forget." In her dorm, she set the new case file beside her books and opened her journal. On the first page, she wrote, "1 year later, I'm still learning how to speak truth to power. But this time, I'm not alone." She closed the notebook, turned off the light, and sat by the window. Across the campus, she could hear the faint echo of laughter, of students planning futures untouched by fear. Somewhere in Baltimore, a boy named Jamal waited for someone to believe in him. Maya smiled softly, the silver cross cool against her skin. She whispered the words that had carried her through every storm. "They decided who I was before I spoke. Now, I speak so no one else has to be decided for." The bells of Memorial Church tolled midnight, deep and resonant, rolling across the campus. Maya didn't move. She just watched the leaves fall, one by one, each landing softly on the cobblestones, quiet, inevitable, like justice finding its way home.